What was unleashed that day, June 1st, 1941? It was a two-day orgy of violence. I ask, where could such a violent thing occur again? Syria, Morocco, Libya, or is it Israel?
And now, The Edwin Black Show. Sponsored by the books of Edwin Black, available on Amazon and at booksellers worldwide. And now, here's Edwin.
Welcome to the Edwin Black Show. I'm Edwin Black, investigative journalist, historian, and author of IBM and the Holocaust, War Against the Weak, Internal Combustion, and numerous other books in 200 editions in 40 languages in 190 countries worldwide. If you like our show's content, spread the word. You can subscribe for alerts at theedwinblackshow.com. And if you want to support our work, please visit theedwinblackshow.com/support. Your help, big or small, assures our complete and utter intellectual independence. We have solidarity today from many national organizations, such as the Emerson Family Foundation, the Fuel Freedom Foundation, the Israel on Campus Coalition, as well as Stand With Us, JNS, the Israeli American Council, EMET, American Association of Jewish Lawyers and Jurists, Scholars for Peace in the Middle East, ZOA Michigan, the Gross Family Center, Americans for Peace and Tolerance, and plenty more. Thank you, everyone. That said, I only speak for myself and for history. Today's episode is sponsored without any preconditions, requests, or stipulations by the Israel on Campus Coalition, which is working day and night to improve the quality of collegiate life. Today, we welcome guests from across America, including our 4 watch parties in the Villages, Newton, Massachusetts, Chicago, and Tampa Bay. Overseas, I see viewers logged on from Australia, as well as Finland, France, Italy, Spain, Germany, Great Britain, Canada, Israel, Morocco, Argentina, and other countries. If you have a question limited to today's topic, please place one short sentence in Zoom's QA feature. The Edwin Black Show, along with our YouTube site, is global and fast growing, enjoying scores of thousands of views. We speak frankly and without partisanship to a fragmented world seeking better understanding of our tormented past, our present, very, very tense, and a future still uncertain. And remember, we will not be censored. By the way, stay tuned for my special word of wisdom at the very end of the show, just before I sign off. We'll get to our main hot button topic, observing International Farhud Day, by asking where next in a few minutes, after some brief announcements and items from the week. At the Edwin Black Show and our companion YouTube site, these are the announcements. We have just released 3 newly edited and visually stunning episodes, long requested. First, a game-changing dive into the incendiary issue of reparations. Second, a revelatory episode documenting the truth about the Temple Mount, Al-Aqsa, or Judaism Holy of Holies. And then the horrifying truth about the Arab slave trade that mass murdered and depopulated millions in Africa. Next week, watch for it, we release the incisive episodes on the hot button topic of our privacy in peril. See them all and hundreds of others at theedwinblackshow.com or search The Edwin Black Show on our YouTube channel. My book tour continues across America, indeed overseas. Last week in Salt Lake City, I delivered a week-long series of lectures on IBM, the Holocaust, plus the Farhud, which we're discussing today, as well as leadership briefings, all sponsored by Congregation Call of Me. I met many wonderful members of the Jewish and Mormon community. Salt Lake City is a beauteous and enlightened place with wonderful restaurants and unforgettable mountain vistas. Now I'm already scheduled into spring of 2024, most notably a 4-event series in South Florida with the Gross Family Center at Florida Atlantic University and 3 of its leading synagogues in the area. Get details from edwinblack.com/events. Now some major items from the week. First, our weekly AI update. We hear continuous admissions by AI scientists in congressional testimony, media interviews, and industry petitions that AI may quickly subjugate or destroy civilization. Remember, AI mimics man as embedded on the internet. Man deceives man on the internet. Therefore, AI will lie and deceive when prompted and eventually without being prompted to improve the realm of deception. Just days ago, a faked explosion next to the Pentagon was posted by AI. Twitterati spread the fakery, and it caused the stock market to dip strongly for a few hours before the fraud was exposed. Imagine if a fake nuclear attack is staged and we respond. A federal judge in Texas now requires attorneys to sign an affidavit that AI is not being employed. This after an attorney there was caught using AI to draft a legal briefing. Several top AI executives reluctantly now concede that AI will create manipulated realities in time for the next election. We already experienced planted computer logs and a faked Russia connection to hoax the country about Donald Trump. That was done by individual human beings. Imagine if AI stepped in to improve the hoaxing. Imagine if our next October surprise is an electoral nightmare and the biggest surprise is that it was an AI fakery that will only be exposed months later. There will come a time very soon when reality itself will have to be doubted the way we now doubt spam emails, junk mail, fake phone calls, and fake news. Yes, reality itself. Soon, very soon, you will need a code word the way we employ software and commercial systems for 2-step verification. That includes me. Yes, it's me, Edwin Black, talking, but I will soon need a code or method to authenticate myself. Right now, we need a prominent disclosure on all AI materials, AI processed, the same way that IBM used Hollerith or Faust stamps during World War II to show that materials were being processed into its Hollerith punch cards. Until that time, and before it's too late, I hope that some network admin somewhere will follow the suggestion of Elon Musk and myself. Blow up the servers, blow them up. A virus will not do it. Destroy the servers. Next item. The country continues to wrongfully dwell on and clash over the issue of transgenderism. As I've said repeatedly, at a time when AI, nuclear war from 4 countries, and political self-destruction is threatening us, transgender issues are private, they're entitled to be private, and they are protected as private. But that is not what is happening. We now turn to Bud Light beer. There is a man named Dylan Mulvaney who has recently identified and dressed up like a woman. He has that right. It's a private decision that he and he alone can make. However, the matter has exceeded personal identification and cosmetics. Mr. Mulvaney is also called an influencer, and Bud Light Beer decided to cash in. To celebrate his 1-year anniversary of girlhood, as Mr. Mulvaney puts it, Bud Light Beer created a special beer can with his girlish image on it and otherwise whipped up a big promotion. This caused an immense backlash amongst a huge portion of Bud Light's drinking customer base. An immediate and mass boycott of Bud Light began, which has knocked Bud Light from its #1 best-selling position among American beers to a beer so stigmatized and rejected You can't give it away in many circles. For week after week since endorsing Mr. Mulvaney, since this was launched, sales of Bud Light have tanked more and more, now down more than 30% with no relief in sight. Owner Anheuser-Busch, which is not an American company, but a Belgian company, has now offered to buy back millions of dollars in unsold and unsellable Bud Light, and even failed to boost sales with rebate and drastic price cuts that saw many stores offering Bud Light for almost $0, in some cases 2 or 3 pennies a can. Unfortunately, now beer delivery men are being insulted. That's terrible. Anheuser-Busch has stopped tweeting anything on its Twitter accounts for weeks because every post prompts tens of thousands of incendiary comments from its base. The beer industry thinks this transgender backlash, which has cost the company billions in stock drops, may not be fixable. The boycott even became a pop usage verb. Such boycotts are now threatened as Bud Lighting, and that is exactly what is happening. The infectious backlash by customers who seem to want transgender matters to be a private entitlement, not part of their commercial life, has struck Target stores. It seems that Target, to celebrate Pride Month, installed a prominent front of store display which included a woman's bathing suit, and that bathing suit was outfitted with a crotch pocket for the male organ. This too prompted a huge and costly backlash. Target senior officials have gave managers 36 hours to dismantle the displays, move them to the back, take down any signage, and reduce the floor imprint. But it was too late. The Target boycott is so extensive that the company has lost, get this, $1 billion a day for at least 10 days with no end in sight. A similar backlash and boycott has struck the Kohl's chain over its prominent pride and transgender displays. Something has happened here which reflects the extreme divisiveness in the nation, the anger amongst the people, left and right and wrong, from beer to bathing suits. And while our nation is preoccupied with who gets to wear a dress and use lipstick, there is no mention of the Uyghur genocide, preparation for the coming communist Chinese wave, or threatened nuclear attacks from North Korea, Iran, the CCP, or Russia. And yes, Putin has just completed underground facilities in Belarus to accommodate Russian nukes, and further, Russian nukes via Belarus have just been offered, believe it or not, to any country that allies with Putin against Ukraine. Can we discuss the important part, not what's private, and especially the privacy of private parts? Next item. In the past, you have heard me describe the hijacked Democratic Party as being completely infested with anarchists, socialists, Jew haters, anti-Israel flamethrowers, race baiters, and communists. In past episodes, I've mentioned the persistent tendency of the Democrats to inflict genocide and persecution against American ethnic groups and others. I've specifically mentioned that it was the Democrats who, as a group, perpetuated Britain's African slavery in this country, inflicted the scourge of lynching, organized the opposition to anti-lynching statutes, organized the Ku Klux Klan, and kept it burning crosses for decades, perpetrated the Trail of Tears of Indian dispossession in World War II, scooped up Japanese Americans and placed them in concentration camps for no justifiable reason, and during that same time ensured that no Nazi death camps, railway lines would be bombed, none would be liberated, and also enforcing a policy in its embassies to deny visas to desperate Jewish refugees, a passivity and depravity that result in millions more Jews dying in the Holocaust, kept the Black family fragmented with the infamous Aid to Dependent Children program that mandated no man in the household, filibustered the Civil Rights Act of 1964 for 60 days, including 7 Saturdays. That was ex-Klansman Robert Byrd, who Hillary described as her mentor. So, a few people have asked me, why I did not itemize Republican persecutions, heinous acts, and crimes against humanity. Fair enough. So I went out to scores of highly informed people and enthusiastic members of the Democratic Party on several chat lists, and then included my entire staff coast to coast and across the oceans, and solicited the worst of the worst Republican crimes and persecutions, the most heinous, and I would read them unfiltered. But despite numerous reminders to all these many groups representing scores of people, I got back virtually nothing. One person suggested restrictive bathrooms, but that seemed to pale when juxtaposed to slavery, lynching, Japanese internment, and the millions extra killed in the Holocaust. I nagged and reminded my contacts. I got nothing, crickets. But my own investigation did turn up one bad thing. Some 32 states, get this, Eve, some 32 states sponsored eugenic sterilization laws to destroy American families. That's genocide. I wrote about this in my book, War Against the Weak. Of those states, approximately 19 had the laws signed and supported by Republican governors and legislatures, compared to less than a dozen Democratic governors and legislators. Now I've done my duty. You can hold the balance in your hands. And this brings us to today's unhappy and frightening episode devoted to International Farhud Day, specifically asking, where next? What was unleashed that day, June 1st, 1941, that horrifying and historic Arab Nazi massacre of Iraqi Jews, a modern day atrocity so blood-curdling it will never coagulate. Quite simply, it was a two-day orgy of violence by Iraqi Arabs aided by policemen and soldiers that exploded against their Jewish neighbors on the religious holiday known as Shavuot. Jews were pulled from the buses, attacked on the street, brutalized in their homes, which were then looted and burned. The weapons were mainly knives and long swords. Hundreds of Jewish stores were pillaged and set aflame. Mothers were raped in front of their children. Fathers were beheaded in front of their family. Children were sliced in half and thrown into the river, many of them just babies. Daughters were abducted en masse to a rape camp. It lasted all day and all night and into the next day. Why do we call it an Arab Nazi pogrom? Because the perpetrators and leaders were Hitler-loving, swastika-wearing, Nazi Germany-supporting Iraqi Arabs, including the Futawa youth group, which was akin to the Hitler Youth, and it even traveled to Germany to march in the Nuremberg Torchlight Parade. It was part of a broad Nazi Arab alliance organized by the Pan-Arab leadership group known as the Higher Arab Committee, which rallied Arabs and Islamists across the world, from India to Bosnia, to work for Hitler's success in World War II. That included getting the Third Reich the oil it needed to invade Russia in June 1941, and then defeat democracy. The payoff would be the expulsion of the Jews from Jewish Palestine and their destruction and extermination in Nazi death camps. The entire movement was led by the Arab Hitler, a man known as Haj Amin al-Husseini, also known as the British appointed Grand Mufti of Jerusalem. Who stood still and watched it happen? The British, who had just fought off Arab marauders trying to seize the Iraqi oil fields owned and operated by the Anglo-Persian Oil Company, now known as British Petroleum, or just BP. Right under the noses of the British Embassy, just a 10-minute drive from British fighting forces who could have intervened and camped just outside the city limits, British forces who consciously decided to not intervene so as to demonstrate a posture of non-interference. In other words, allowing the murder of hundreds of people and the burning of entire blocks of Jewish stores. This was a shining demonstration of non-interference. Nor did the Roosevelt administration permit any refugees to enter or encourage the British to take any in. These 2 nights of murder, dismemberment, arson, and destruction finally ended only when Iraq government forces stepped in to quell the violence. But this simmering bloodlust did not end in June 1941. It was more than the Sephardic Jewish Kristallnacht. It was the beginning of the end for the Iraqi Jewish community, a loyal, loving community which had dwelled in peace in Iraq for 2,700 years, 1,000 years before Muhammad. Just after World War II ended and in the aftermath of the birth of Israel, Iraq and its Arab neighbors expelled some 850,000 Jews, penniless, stateless, under threat of annihilation, and did so with reportage on the front page of the New York Times and braggadocio from the front rows of the United Nations. No one lifted a finger to help these people. No one lifted a finger to recover their property or even remember the ashes and moans of soul corroding, generation encoding, legacy eroding, and future foreboding on this heinous atrocity. Why was it known as the Forgotten Pogrom? Forgotten until I stumbled upon it 20 years ago when I researched my award-winning book, Banking on Baghdad, as an unknown community-wide massacre known as the Farhud, which in an Arab dialect means violent dispossession. That one chapter struck a no longer dulled nerve in the Sephardic Jewish community and ignited the so-called Farhud Recognition Project, where Sephardic activists asked only that their blood and tears be remembered as a true Nazi-era event. But the U.S. Holocaust Museum in Washington refused because its discussion of the entire pogrom violated its mission statement, which was to commemorate the destruction of European Jewry, which, yes, bore the overwhelming brutality of Hitler's Holocaust. This included my own parents and every other member of my extended family in Poland, and 6 million other innocent souls, hand to hand, embracing the very young, the very old, and so many never born, early torn by the hatred and the scorn. But Hitler's war against the Jews was a war against all Jews everywhere, including North Africa, the Middle East, and the Levant Crescent. I stood up to the Holocaust Museum. Remember, you only stand up to the biggest and most powerful. I stood up to the Holocaust Museum and demanded they recognize the Farhud. I wrote the best-selling and award-winning book, The Farhud, which devoted its entire editorial thrust to that riot and the sprawling international Arab Nazi alliance. With that book in my hand, and as a ground I would stand with a throng of like-minded Jews from communities east and west, willing to contest but unwilling to rest until the Holocaust Museum changed its stance. This it did, under pressure, but that was not enough. I wanted the world to know, the history to flow, and the facts to show forevermore, both to remember a past and forfend the future. So the next stop was the United Nations. There on a rainy, pushing back day, June 1st, 2015, I appeared accompanied by some of our best leaders, Eliza Lewin, Malcolm Hoenlein, Stand With Us, students from Rabbi Elie Abadie School, and others there despite every effort to stop us and ignore us. With history staunching my back, we all of us proclaimed in a live, globally streamed event, International Farhud Day, a day to remember, burned into the global calendar and recognized by Israel's government, now observed in different ways around the world with tears of remembrance and the joy of independence, but always focused on the dim place just over the horizon. I asked, where could such a violent thing occur again? I considered the well springs of anti-Semitism in Syria, Morocco, Libya, and on. Finally, I was able to write down the 2 most likely places of recurrence. I'm going to read from them. 1, the United States in 2025, if the Jew haters grab power and unleash and inspire forces in our own cities to exact flesh and flame against us. After all, just 20 years before, to the day, the citizens of Tulsa burned out and murdered their black neighbors in a largely forgotten American pogrom. We have seen rampages in this country, encouraged, tolerated, misreported, and excused into summers of love and forgetful chapters of oh well. And the second place of vulnerability, it's Israel. If the wrong people come to power here, and inspire the murderous rampages there, always lurking beneath the surface. After all, we witness many Farhuds every day when women approach Jews for local directions and then pull their kitchen knives out of their purses to stab them to death, where cars at intersections can suddenly veer into a crowd and run down people, where the throats of infants can be sliced to death and then rewarded with massive annual Palestinian salaries, which are funded by Joe Biden's foreign aid. If the wrong people get into power here, they will recognize the killers as the new kings there and inspire them to do en masse what they have been doing, one vein at a time, every day. And we have seen private previews in Israeli cities such as Akko, Lod, Jaffa, and even Jerusalem. So remember why I wear the heavy stone of history on my back. It bends me lower, yes, so I can see more clearly the threat to life and limb just around the corner and just over the horizon, to help us understand whether I'm right or wrong, or if they can improve upon my eyesight, my hindsight, or my foresight. I bring you two supremely qualified panelists. I call upon one of Israel's most accomplished scholars of Arab history and culture. I bring you Mordechai Kedar, at this moment stopped along the road in Israel. He has a story that will grip and touch us all and comes very close to home. But first, before that, I bring you Rabbi Elie Abadie, a senior rabbi in the United Arab Emirates, a decades-long leader of the organization Jews for Justice from Arab Countries, and the man who stood with me during the United Nations proclamation in 2015. Rabbi Abadie, tell us what you think. Am I right or wrong about what may happen in this country and in Israel?
Thank you, Edwin, for all the hard work that you have been doing on behalf of the Jews from Iraq, Jews from the Middle East, and really Jews all over and humanity, and bringing the reminder of the Farhud to your audience and to the audiences at large if they hear about it and they care about it. The Farhud was a special event and it wasn't a special event. On one hand, it was a special event because, of course, it was Nazi-inspired, anti-Semitically inspired by Hajj Amin al-Husseini, who was the Mufti of Jerusalem, a dear friend of Hitler, Yimah Shemo. And so, yes, the Farhud had a different impetus, if you will. However, I don't know if Farhuds have happened throughout the ages, either in the Middle East, North Africa, or Europe. So they were not called Farhuds. In Europe, they were called pogroms, many a times in Eastern Europe and Russia and the Ukraine and Poland and many of those countries. And certainly then we had the Holocaust, which was a biggest tragedy of all. But even in the Middle East and North Africa, we have had other Farhuds, not called that way, as I said, in which the local population rose against the Jewish population of their neighborhood and their cities and their countries. Don't forget that that it happened again, but at a large scale in 1947, after the partition plan at the United Nations, where they voted the establishment of the state of Israel. Actually, they voted the partition of that land into a Jewish home and an Arab home. And 3 days after that were declared as the days of rage in 10 Arab countries, all the way from Morocco and North Africa, all the way to Iraq, and many of the countries in between. And those days were 3 days of rage in which they left, hundreds of deaths, business looted, burned, synagogues burnt and destroyed. My own mother and father, who they tell me the story, they were living right next door to the great synagogue in Aleppo. They saw how the mobs, aided by the police, by the state police, the police, they're supposed to be there to protect their citizens. Yet they aided the hooligans and the protesters and the mob into climbing the wall of the synagogue, going into the synagogue, destroying the synagogue, burning it, taking the Torah scroll, the holy books, even carrying the rabbi out of the synagogue, whom he refused to move. He said, if you're burning the synagogue, then burn me with it. They carried him and dumped him out in the street and dumped all the Torah scrolls with the books in the patio of the synagogue and burned it. So yes, unfortunately, we Jews have suffered that throughout the ages. And we read that in the famous Haggadah on Pesach, as we say, "B'chol dor vador omdim alenu lechalotenu." In every generation, somebody rises to annihilate us, not just to attack us, but to annihilate us. And the Almighty God saves us from their hand. And so my parent generation saw it, my grandparent generation saw it, my great-grandparent generation saw it. We are seeing it in our generation. And I do hope and pray that our children will not see it and our children's children will not see it, but that's only hope and prayers. Now, that could happen anywhere in the world. Yes, absolutely, it could happen anywhere in the world. It has happened, first of all, almost anywhere in the world, at least in the ancient world, not so ancient, in the old world, right? But could it happen in the new world? Could it happen now in the new? Of course it could happen, because wherever Jews live, there are going to be anti-Semite, unfortunately. Unfortunately, by studies we have and statistics, we have shown that even in countries that there are no Jews living, that people have not even seen Jews or known what a Jew is, they harbor some anti-Semitic feeling. The latest ADL report, I think, shows that. But anywhere that there are Jews in the world, when you have leaders or politicians that do not protect their population, that do not protect their Jewish population also, then it could happen. Look, it has happened in the last 2-3 years here in the United States, maybe not at the scale of a Farhud or a pogrom, but we have seen anti-Semitic attacks on a daily basis. It averages 10 anti-Semitic attacks a day in the United States, minimum. And that's because the political leaders, attorneys generals, and district attorneys are lackadaisical in their pursuit of criminals and prosecuting these crimes and in putting a stop to these crimes by saying this is unacceptable, we will not tolerate it, we will stop it, and we will criminalize everybody who does these things. But the leaders don't care, the politicians don't care, and instead of doing so, they're protecting the criminals. The victim becomes the criminal, and the criminal becomes the victim. By stopping bail, by stopping to prosecute any of those crimes, they're all worried about political crimes, which are bad enough, but these are crimes against humanity. When a group, when an individual is attacked because of their faith, because of their ethnicity, because of their nationality, that is crimes against humanity. And as long as you're going to have leaders in any country of the world that will tolerate that, a Farhud-like attack against the Jews can happen. And unfortunately, I don't want to say will happen, but I hope it doesn't, but it can and it will happen. You mentioned the United States. Yes, it can happen. As I said, it has been happening in the last 2-3 years, not at that scale. In Israel, well, it's happening also on a daily basis when Arab Palestinians are attacking Jews, innocent Jews, men, women, and children, babies, in the most cruelest way. It could happen, of course. We had the first Intifada, we had the second Intifada. I don't know if you read yesterday, just yesterday, the 16th victim of the Sbarro pizza terrorist attack that took place 22 years ago. She has been in a coma for 22 years and she just died yesterday. That was a period of definite Farhud-like attacks against the Jews in their own land, in their own country, by people that are receiving benefits by the Israeli government and the welcome by the Israeli government. So yes, my dear Edwin, it could happen here, it could happen there, it could happen everywhere.
Okay, so Rabbi, I took just a couple of notes about your excellent and incisive remarks, and thank you for your many years of labor and devotion to this topic long before I came upon the scene. You were way, way first, and I was way, way second. So thank you very much. You said something about on Pesach, that's Passover. We say in every generation there arises one of these Hamans who want to try to kill the Jews. And I think those three words, in every generation, is what I would like people to understand. Now, I realize people came to the United States, they got one car, they got a second car, they got a TV, they got a second TV, they got a second fridge, everything is hunky-dory. But in every generation, and that's important to remember, your comments about the lack of bail, the lack of prosecution may not seem relevant, but they're incredibly relevant. And that's because this lack of restraint allows these most negative impulses to play themselves out. And so people can say, we'll riot in Los Angeles, as you saw, and we'll beat up Jews who are having sushi, and we'll chase them across the streets, and nothing will happen. No one will be called to account. So you were quite correct about that. And as for the Sbarro bombing that you spoke of a couple of decades ago, we had a whole show on that. I will remind you what you already know, and what some in our viewership know, is that one of the chief perpetrators of that bombing, who boasted of the bombing and who regretted that she didn't kill more children, she is a prominent and protected broadcast personality in Jordan, and Jordan has failed to honor requests for extradition. Thank you very much. I want to bring in Mordechai Kedar. Moti, come to the screen. Bavakasha, tell us what you think about what can happen on the Farhud.
I'm in a car. I hope you see me.
Well, we'll just put your picture over that when we edit it. But where are you driving?
I'm approaching home. In like 10 minutes, I'll be near my home and I'll be more stable.
All right, good. What do you think?
When I, as a researcher, ask myself, what is the source of Jew hatred? Because if we want to deal with this, we have to know where it comes from. What Rabbi Abadie so eloquently said about the survey about anti-Semitism in the Middle East, as we know, I just forgot one thing, or not only one, but the Jews of Mashhad in Iran, 150 years ago, were forced to embrace Islam and to convert to Islam. So they became Muslims, but under the ground, they remained Jewish. And the descendants who live today in Great Neck, in Long Island, or in Milano, or in Israel, they remember very well this time which they made face as if they are Muslims, and because they were forced to embrace Islam. There was another group in Morocco, formerly named Wahidun, and they actually forced the people also to convert to Islam. And this is why the Maimonides, when he ran away from Spain, from Cordoba, where he was born, he had to run away again from Morocco to Egypt, which did not impose Islam on Jewish people. So definitely anti-Semitism was in both the Christian world and the Arab world, Islamic world. And this question is why? Why do they hate Jews? In every research, especially when it comes to sociology, you try to have a control group. Control group, you check the theory on other group of people to see if it works with them or not. And for us, for this presentation, we'll take the Islamic world, the Arab and Islamic world on one side, and the European Christian world on the other side. This will be the test, and the control group will be India, China, and Japan. Okay? What we see in the corpus means in the Arab and the Islamic world and the Christian world is Jews are hated because of two reasons which do not occur in the control groups. The core reasons are, first is the religious. Both Islam and Christianity are derivatives of Judaism. And in order to prove to themselves that they are relevant religions and the real religions, they have to undermine the existence and the legitimacy of the Jewish religion, because by denying the Jewish religion and by denigrating the Jew and being mean to a Jew, they prove to themselves that their religion is valid and the right religion, both Islam in the Islamic countries and Christianity in the Christian countries. How can we prove it? In India, in China, in Japan, their religions through history were not connected to Judaism. So they did not need the denigration of Jews and Jews in order to prove to themselves that their religions are valid. So the mere connection between Islam and Christianity with Judaism, and actually there are derivatives of Judaism, caused the Muslims, Arabs, and Christians on the other side to be mean to the Jew because of this religious issue. The second issue is the mere presence of the Jewish people within those peoples. Jews lived in Arab and Islamic countries, just like they lived in European Christian countries. But Arabs, Muslims here, and Christians there could blame the Jew for every shortcoming which was in their societies. They could blame the Jew for the plagues, the real plagues which they were suffering from, and the Jews were there as a scapegoat for every shortcoming of their societies. The Jew was easy prey for their accusations about everything, and this is why, or this is one of the reasons for the hatred to Jew. How do I know? Jews traditionally did not live in India except for one place, Cochin, did not live in China, and did not live in Japan. And since these peoples in these countries never saw a Jew until recent times, they did not develop Jew hatred as was in the Arab and the Christian world. And this is actually, Edwin, this is what we're talking about. The proximity of the religions between Judaism and Christianity and Islam, and the mere fact that Jews actually live within these peoples. Therefore, in the conclusion, we cannot do enough, we cannot do anything about the religious issues, because these are facts of life, that Judaism is the mother of all these religions. We cannot change it. What we can change is the presence of Jews in these countries. We should tell these host societies, hey guys, if you hate us, today we have an alternative. We can go to Israel and you will stay with the jihadists. This is actually what the Jews of France are doing with big numbers. They migrate to Israel, mainly to Israel, running away from the meeting of the Islamic anti-Semitism, which migrates to the Christian version of anti-Semitism, which is rooted in the Christian societies, especially in France as well. Not only Germany, the French hunted Jews and sent them to Germany in the 40s. Everybody knows it. Drancy was the place which was Jews were concentrated in there in order to be sent to be exterminated. So the French are no better than the Germans in this case. And this is what Jews should say, either verbally or by deeds. Hey guys, you hate us? It's your problem. We'll leave you with the jihadists. We have an alternative. And this way, if they don't see us, they will hate us from afar. And we don't have to suffer day by day from these people. And this is the conclusion which we should derive. all these talking about abolishing anti-Semitism and fighting anti-Semitism, these are all words. I don't believe in them. Because if they hate us, they hate us because we are different, because we are the mother of their religion, the mother of their culture. They actually emulate everything from us. Western values are actually Jewish values, which were taken from the Bible. And, much of what they have is taken from Jews, and Jews contributed to their societies.
Moti, you said so much, and I said so many notes. I can see Rabbi Abadie is waiting to jump in also. But first of all, this is the first panelist that we've had who has not only given a well-grounded delivery, but well-driven and now well-walking to the house and probably up the stairs. So keep going to your office. We'll get some lights. Thank you for your work. I'm going to make some comments. But before I do that, I want you to tell me, when we talk about burning Jews to death, when we talk about burning Jews in the Farhud, when we talk about burning Jews in Ukraine, do you know a Jew who was burned in Israel alive?
Abi Har-Even, professor for physics and aeronautics, a friend of mine was burned to death in Acre in the Farhud of 2 years ago, 2021 in May. The riots in Lod and in Acre, Akko, and in Jaffa, and he was burned to death in a hotel in Akko. A dear friend of mine, a member of Bessa Center for Strategic Studies, and this is the price which we pay for our independence. But Edwin, let me calm down. Look at this. This shul, this is my shul. Now it's almost 11 p.m. And now we have Tfilat Arvit, Ma'ariv in this place. This place is open almost 24/7 for people to come to pray, to study. And this is Jewish life here in Ra'anana, here in Eretz Israel. And this is the answer to all the anti-Semites. We are going to be more Jewish. We're going to flourish in our forefathers' land, and we will build it in spite of their anger. And tough on them, we will remain loyal to our tradition, loyal to our religion, loyal to ourselves, and loyal to our values. And tough on them, we live already for 3,000 years since the establishment of the state of Israel, the first state of Israel by King David or by King Saul, even before him. And here we are back in our forefathers' land, and tough on all the others. Where are the Romans? Where are the Greeks? Where are all the others? Came and went away. We are here to stay forever.
Okay, that's beautiful. Now, you can go sit somewhere, keep the camera going. I'm going to make a couple of comments. First of all, the hotel that your friend was burned in, that's my favorite hotel in Akko. That's the Effendi, correct?
Right.
And my friend who owns the Effendi is Uri Buri, who owns the Uri Buri restaurant, correct?
Right.
And your friend was burned to death. I'm so sorry. You made some remarks. It's interesting that you state that where the Jews do not exist, there is not this intense anti-Semitism. That is the Herzlian concept. Herzl said, well, if we're not there, then they're not going to hate us. And he actually said something similar to you when he went to the Tsar and he said, look, you want to kill a third of the Jews, you want to expel a third, imprison a third, I got a suggestion for you. If you don't like them, give them to me, but let me take the sheep and goats with. And that was done before the transfer agreement, which I also wrote about. But we also have Jews who are hated where they don't exist. We have Jews who are hated in the Palestinian Authority, where Mahmoud Abbas creates a full-time business of promoting hatred against the Jews. And you talked about the hidden Jews. You talked about the Jews who were forced to convert, and their descendants are actually hidden Jews And I would like you to know that Mahmoud Abbas is of Jewish ancestry. Was his father and grandfather not a Jewish guy from Svad? Do you know about this?
Yeah, they say that, and there are others also in near Hebron. There is a whole clan named Machamra. Machamra means people who make wine. Who is making wine in the Islamic world? Yes, there were Jews who were forced to convert to Islam, and the Ottomans were doing this also in the Balkans. They forced Christians to convert to Islam. So this was the Islamic way how to expand the borders of Islam by converting by force all kinds of peoples, as we see today in Central Asia, in Eastern Asia, in Africa, in many places. So this is the kind of religion which we have to deal with, and until today they force people to
Now, we'd
remain
just
in
like
Muslims.
to add a few comments. You spoke about the lack of anti-Semitism in Japan, the Asian countries, India, because we weren't there. In fact, Japan refused to kill the Jews as a partner of Adolf Hitler, and they actually revered the Jews because the Jews assisted them in 1903 and 1905 in their fight against the Russians. You also mentioned the concept of the scapegoat, that the Jews are a scapegoat for the water being bad, the plague, the virus, all these different things. I'm going to say something that you know and that Rabbi knows, but the word scapegoat comes from Passover, where the sins are. Is that not correct, Rabbi Abadie?
For Yom Kippur.
Oh, from Yom Kippur, slicha. From Yom Kippur, that's why he's the rabbi and I'm the student. Yom Kippur, where the sins of the community are put onto a goat, and that goat is released into a place called Gaza, and Gaza is Gaza.
Yeah, there are a lot of Azazel around that area.
That's right. All right.
Edwin, I have to ask you permission. I'm going to Ma'ariv now. It's 11 o'clock. It's the last
You've
minute.
done enough. That's it. All right, you've done enough.
Yeah, thank you so much for having me here, and see you the next time.
Yes, I'll see you next month in Jerusalem, I hope. Before we take our questions, Rabbi, what did you think of these remarks, which some of them might seem quite volatile by Mordechai Kedar? Go ahead, just talk.
Yeah, so first I want to make a point about something that you mentioned and then about what he mentioned. So here's a clear example of lackadaisical prosecution. This young thug who a year ago or so attacked a young Jew in Times Square, if you remember, and bludgeoned him. He has to be taken to the hospital and took him a few months to recover. What did he get from this district attorney Bragg? He got 6 months of probation. What's probation? It's not even a slap on his wrist. Probation means be careful, don't commit another crime. But aren't we all on probation? Aren't we all warned by the law not to commit any crime? Is that what he got? Just shows you that Jewish blood is cheap. And these leaders, these political leaders, or these district attorneys do not care less about the Jewish blood. They care more about the criminal who attacked the Jew. He only got 6 months of probation, again, which means nothing. Be careful, don't do another crime.
And what you said was so interesting. You asked, are we not all actually on probation under the eyes of God? Is that not correct? All right.
God and the law and the local law. We are all warned not to commit crime. Now, and in regards to what my dear friend, Dr. Mordechai Kedar said, of course, there have been throughout history, Jews were forced converted in Christianity for over 1,000 years, from the Visigoths, from the first synod in the year 400 or so in Spain and in Europe. Jews were forced to convert to Christianity up until after the Inquisition, up until the 1800. Even Herzl that you mentioned, the Herzlian Even Herzl, one of his early solution was to convert all the Jews to Christianity so they won't be persecuted. So imagine that. That was one of his first solutions.
Wait a minute. That was even before he said, let's all go to Uganda. Then we'll really be out of their way, right?
Correct. In fact, he made an appointment with the Pope. He was trying to convince Jewish leaders, and then Jewish leaders, they told him he's crazy about it. And even the Pope told him, no, this is not going to work out. But that was one of his. So imagine in the 1880s, we were going to be forced to convert just to save our skin. But what I want to specifically speak about what Moti said, that Israel is the answer. Israel might be the answer, but it's not the solution. And there is a difference here. Why is not the solution? Because we know that, yes, the Europeans wanted the Jews out of there. Even Hitler wanted them out of there before he exterminated them. But here they left. But European governments, the European Union is persecuting Jews in Israel by supporting terrorism, by supporting NGOs that come against the Israeli government, by supporting the PA terrorists, by giving money to them, and by still boycotting in Israel in many areas. So here we left Europe, we back in our land and the land Israel, and yet they're still persecuting us. So it might be the answer, but it's not the solution, because an anti-Semite, no matter where they are, they're anti-Semite. If Jews are, maybe anti-Semitism began by, as Moti said, we were the mother religion, and all the other religions, they want to discredit us so they could have legitimacy, or because we lived in their countries and cities. But now, even if we don't live there, they're still persecuting us. The European Union, the United Nations, the condemnation after condemnation of the United Nations. Oh, they're not condemning the Jews, they're condemning Israel, right?
Well, it's funny that in Europe, they said, Jews raus, get out of Europe and go to Palestine. So they did that. Now they're in Palestine. They say, from the river to the sea, we shall be free of Jews. And by the way, when it's from the river to the sea, Palestine will be free. Where are those Jews going to go? They're going to go
the water.
They're going to go to the Mediterranean, correct?
Yeah, that was the motto of the 5 armies that invaded Israel after its establishment, 1948. It was, we're going to throw the Jews into the Mediterranean. That was what we're planning to do.
And the chief general of that invasion said, this will be an extermination like the Mongols. And they also bragged, for the first time in 1,000 years, there'll be no Jew in Jerusalem. And you know that well. Let's take our questions. We're loaded with questions. The first question is from the watch party in the villages. You know where the villages is, correct? Good. This tragedy is Sephardic. You have done a wonderful job. This is to me telling it. But are you not Polish? I'm Polish second. Jewish first. What about you? You're Lebanese, correct?
Yeah.
But you care very dearly about the European Holocaust as well as the Hitlerian Holocaust that touched the Arabic world, correct?
Well, of course, but I care about the Holocaust of Jews, no matter if they were Ashkenazi or Sephardic. They're Jews after all. And don't forget that almost 400,000 Sephardic Jews perished in the Holocaust also. It's a fact that many people don't know about.
That's more than German Jewry. Anyway, I'm happy I was able to say I'm Polish second and Jewish first. Here's the watch party in Newton, Massachusetts, which is where the Fig Newton comes from, in case you didn't know that. Did the Jews ever recover their land or property in the Arab countries? I'm turning that over to the expert on that topic. Rabbi, how do you answer these people in Newton, Mass?
No, not yet, but eventually and hopefully soon that will happen. But in many countries, those properties have been taken over by the local population. In many countries, the government still holds the keys to many of those properties, and the properties are empty. Each country had a different policy towards them, from Morocco all the way to Iraq, as I said. Morocco is Jews have their property. There have not been any problem in the last 50, 60 years. So, but in any other country, many of those properties either are empty or have been taken over by the local population.
Well,
But
when you
we're going to demand them back.
when you say in the future, do you mean in my lifetime, my daughter's lifetime, or my granddaughter's lifetime?
Well, in our lifetime, the demand is going to take place. The return, that might be in our children's lifetime.
Okay, got it. Here's a question from the watch party in Chicago, my hometown. I wish I could go back there. How would Democrats inspire anti-Jewish riots in America? We're very close to that now in Chicago if these groups want to come up to the suburbs. All right, so we see the Jew hatred that these Democratic contingents, it's no longer a squad, it's a squadron. We hear how they put Jews down, how they put Israel down, how they fabricate stories. We see what happened at CUNY Law School when they talked about opposing fascism, capitalism, and Zionism. Notice how they put all that together. They talk about Zionism and capitalism. Zionism was originally collectivism. It was not capitalism. So I think with the right type of race baiting, which Democrats are expert at every day today as we see them, and with the right amount of turn the other direction, like we saw with attempted harassment of the Supreme Court justices and with the Summer of Love, I think that you could see these types of anti-Jewish riots. They would say, they're the ones that did it. They're the ones that have done this to you. They're the ones that have taken your money, give it to Israel, all kind of fake stuff. What do you guys say about that, Rabbi?
Well, absolutely. I'm going to bring you factual examples of how Democrats have condoned, abetted, supported, and organized marches and protests that included anti-Semitic. The BLM movement, they had many of the so-called Palestinian flags, anti-Semitic chants. The Women's March, the Feminist Women's March, led by anti-Semite and anti-Zionist and anti-Israel.
Correct, you are. Correct, you are.
Flags, chanting, slogans. These movements have been financed, orchestrated, organized, and abetted and condoned by the Democrats.
That's right. You can always see the Palestinian flag and the answer group in this civil unrest. Now we got Charles from Binghamton, and there's no P in Binghamton, by the way. And Charles says to me, you say blow up the AI servers, but who will blow up the servers in China and Russia? Charles, very good question. If we take action against the servers, who's going to blow them up in China? I think that part of this is that AI is a community of servers, a network of servers. My friend Wes in San Francisco would know best. Probably Eve would know something about this too. And I believe that even if there are such servers in China and Russia, that we can make a major move toward disabling AI taking over the world if we blow up these servers. Elon Musk, who probably knows as much as anyone about AI, suggested blowing up the servers. Mercy in Dallas. We need some mercy in Dallas. What happened to the Mufti of Jerusalem? Go, Rabbi.
No, go ahead. You're expert on that, Edwin.
Well, the Mufti of Jerusalem lived an illustrious life after the war. He was nominated to be an indicted and prosecuted war criminal. The United Nations wanted to refer him to the Nuremberg or Nuremberg-style tribunals. He, of course, visited the concentration camps. He, of course, urged European governments and the Red Cross to send Jewish children to Polish concentration camps. He, in his autobiography, he said that Adolf Eichmann was a rare diamond. I'm sure you remember that. And he died well off, well revered, and he never was called to account. But he lost his hotels in Jerusalem. Is that not correct? Which hotel did he have?
Yes, correct. He lost his hotel. Just to basically, nothing happened to him. He lived his life like unfortunately, many Nazi leaders who ended up living in Argentina and Uruguay, in the United States even, and protected by the US government for their scientific knowledge. Many of them lived well.
Operation Paperclip.
That's right. Many of them lived well, rich, happy, so lived till 100 years of age. But we do believe that ultimate justice will be meted against them.
That's
Where?
right.
Where?
Up downstairs.
Yes.
So by the man upstairs. But,
Right.
you know, not only did they live in Argentina and Detroit and New Jersey, they also lived very nicely in Damascus. They lived in Cairo. They lived in Beirut. Yeah, they lived in Baghdad. They lived in all of these countries. And, you know, when I'm asked the question, what happened to the Mufti of Jerusalem? Why didn't you ask me this? Why didn't you ask, what happened to the Nazis in the Einsatzgruppen? What happened to Ukraine? What happened to all these killers? Hundreds of thousands of people were in the Nazi killing machines. And how many people were called to account? A couple of dozen, and the rest of them were not held to account. That's a very good question. Thank you for asking. Mercy in Dallas. Alex in London. I heard you speak in London on this topic. How did Israel absorb almost 850,000 Jews suddenly airlifted out of the Arab world and dropped onto its shore? Well, Rabbi, you know that story. What happened to those Jews? How long did they spend in relocation centers like Or Yehuda?
Look, they spend a long time in those relocation centers until they were found where to place them, where to live. Unfortunately, that's what it is. It's you have a tragedy that takes place. You have an injustice that takes place, and then the justice takes time for it to take place, and that's what happened.
Well, actually, it wasn't that long. They were put into relocation centers, but Israel developed a ministry of absorption. And quickly, these people were absorbed into the country. These people who had nothing, these people who had the earrings pulled from their lobes and the scars from their neck, who were brought and dropped into this land, were taken out of those resettlement tent cities, and they were put into the country. And now, I think you will agree, that group of people is running Israel. They're running the political parties. They are either the majority or they have the power of the majority. And that makes me ask you a question, Rabbi. Why 70 years later, after just a few years, the Jews got out of their relocation centers? 70 years later, why is there a Palestinian refugee camp in Ramallah? Why is there one in Gaza? Why is there one in Jenin? Can you answer me that question?
Of course, I'll answer you. I always ask myself, but look, the resettlement, the Ma'abarot, as known, the Ma'abarot in Israel at the beginning, it was difficult life for some people for several years. Israel did not have the funds, not the manpower to be able to handle them. So many people did live hard life in those resettlement. People that in Cairo or in Syria or in Baghdad or in Tunis, that they lived well. They were well-to-do and lived well when they came to Israel with nothing in their pocket, just a pajama, sometimes a shirt off their back. They went through very hard time until Israel was able to absorb them. And it took time. It took time for that absorption. And of course, we're not going to speak about internal politics. But the reason I always ask myself, why is there a refugee camp in Gaza? That's or a so-called Palestinian territory, or in Ramallah, or in Jenin. One only reason: they're using them as pawns against Israel, because the leadership of the Palestinian people is selfish, egocentric. They want power, control, and money. They do not care about their population.
So
if they care about the population, they would do something about it.
So basically, these guys are in a so-called refugee camp in Ramallah. They walk out across the street, they get a Starbucks, they meet their friends, they do whatever they want to do, and they're still stuck in the refugee camp. How do you figure that 70 years later?
Because the leadership is selfish and they want to put the money in their European banks and not spend it. It's not their money. It's the money that the United Nations has given them, the money that the US has given them, the money that the European Union has given those leaders. And where does the money going? To their bank accounts, not to their population.
Not only to their bank accounts, some to their son-in-laws. Like
to their, to their family and cronies, of course. I mean, look at Arafat when he died. How many billions of dollars did he have? For whom? All that money was supposed to go to educate, rehabilitate, and service these people.
Have you ever seen the palaces of the Palestinian politicians in the West Bank? My God, they would dwarf the chalets of Switzerland. We have a question from Charles in New York State. This question is from a liberal Republican. Look out. Why do you, meaning me, Edwin, continue to lambaste the Democrats when you know the Dixiecrats, these were the racist Democrats, are now Southern Republicans? Well, first of all, I would say that most of the Dixiecrats that were actual Dixiecrats are now either dead or in wheelchairs because they were major Dixiecrats in the last century. So I don't know, Charles, that that is true. But let us say for a moment that it's largely true. I'm not saying it is largely true, but let's say that there are bunches of those guys. They can harbor any anti-Semitism that they want. They can be good old boys in South Carolina, in Georgia, if they want. The Republican Party is not demonstrating as a party anti-Semitism and anti-Israel action. They are demonstrating some support. I don't pretend for one moment that the heart of every Republican is pure, whether they're elected or not. So I think that there might be a few Dixiecrats left from the Robert Byrd days, a few Dixiecrats left from the George Wallace days, but I think they're mainly dead or they're in wheelchairs. Wes in San Francisco. It always gives me a long question. Let me read it. I don't know if I have time to read this. The servers that run AI, that's artificial intelligence, which I would like to now rename Oy vey. The servers that run AI are numbered likely in the tens of thousands. He's informing us here. They are redundant. So even if you pull the plug on one facility, that will shift control to the next set of servers and so on. Government regulation is required. Corporations cannot self-govern this level of power. That is why we have government and regulations. That is a very wise comment, and it's true. I'm sure when Elon Musk says blow up the servers, he means the servers we can get to. And it's a matter of desperation. When Edwin Black says blow up the servers, it's a matter of desperation. But you know, when it comes to servers, one goes down and 10 more take their place. So maybe it's possible that a remote destruction can take place in some of these servers. But when Wes says that it's up to government, it ain't going to happen. The guys in government who make these laws go slow and take money to make these laws. There's something called a lobbyist in Washington, and Washington and lobbyists go together like peanut butter and jelly. They make a tremendous sandwich, and it would take years to get such legislation done. When I was at the Ottawa Data Privacy Conference in spring, the leading advocate, the leading scholar, said it could take the government 20 years to catch up and make the right legislation. Let's say it's not 20 years. Let's say it's 20 months. I don't think we have 20 months. Do you have a comment? Do you have an understanding of how dangerous the AI is, Rabbi?
Yes, I have actually spoken about spirituality and AI, or spirituality and the internet crypto, and all that unreal world, so to speak. We have to be very, very careful because AI is as good or as bad as we make it. If we make it good, then AI is good and will be self-limited and will be to serve humanity and do good. But if we input into the AI our hatred, our racism, our discrimination, our anti-Semitism, and so on and so forth, then AI will reflect who we are. I think that's what it is. The same thing that the internet could be good and could be bad, AI can also be good or be bad depending only on us.
But you know, I would comment that the internet was devised, and by the way, I was around at the start of the internet. Unlike Al Gore, I did not invent the internet, but I was around there. I was around long before computers had numbers in them, when people were just putting everything up on the internet. I was there.
When binary meant something else.
That's right, when binary meant something else. And not that there's anything wrong with that, as Seinfeld would say. And the internet was made to uplift people. And now the internet is oppressive on people. Medicine was made to uplift people and was used to kill people. In the United States with eugenics, in Europe with Nazi Germany, in Russia with its actions. These were with what Japan did with its biological warfare units. This is the corruption of our best institutions. So that's a suitable warning. I think we're about out of time. So I'm going to say we're out of time. And I want you to hold for my closing word of wisdom, everybody. Just 1 minute away. Don't go anywhere, Wes. Same for you, Eve. But first, I want to thank my esteemed and insightful guests, Mordechai Kedar and Rabbi Elie Abadie. Plus, I thank my talented international team, including Eve in New Jersey, Nick in London, and John in Japan, for their outstanding work, as well as many others in numerous cities around the world. My team, each of them, is comprised of very dedicated people. I and we all owe them. I'll see everyone back here next week at 3 p.m. Eastern. You want to be a friend of the Edwin Black Show? Go to the edwinblackshow.com/support. Keep me independent. You want to hear me in person? Watch my website for my events. I just finished a series in Salt Lake City, and I hope to be in London and Israel soon. Consult my events page at edwinblack.com. Until then, head over to any Barnes & Noble in the USA or any Amazon, Walmart, Apple, or Kobo platform in 190 countries across this roiling, toiling, boiling planet, where you can find any of my 200 book editions, such as IBM and the Holocaust, soon to be a major Hollywood blockbuster, God Should End the Writer's Strike Soon, War Against the Weak, and Internal Combustion, and even the Farhud, which we discussed today. You want an autographed copy? Hit my personal newly redesigned website, edwinblack.com. Thank you, Wes. And click books. Get access alerts to participate live in future shows at the edwinblackshow.com. You'll see a much enhanced and exquisitely produced version of this show and prior episodes by subscribing to our YouTube channel at The Edwin Black Show. Click the notification button like tens of thousands of others. You will love them. We put new ones up each week, produced by a bold international crew. You can follow me at Edwin Black Book on Twitter and Facebook. And now for my closing word of wisdom. 2 impulses can dwell within us: the urge to destroy and the urge to love. Choose the right impulse. Thank you, world, and I'm now zooming out.